Now, we all like being steered in the right direction, and there's no better man to do it than John Smith. John Smith from Prostia. Please make him welcome. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. John Smith's the name. Try and forget that. I think I said that last time I was here.
Yes, he did.
Yep, he's got a good memory. I haven't. Steering. Cars, we've all got cars. We all love cars. Most of our cars, the manual, have got 3 pedals, but we don't drive along with our foot resting on the clutch. I hope we don't drive along resting our foot on the brake. And with cruise control, we often don't have our foot on the pedal or the accelerator, but we all hang on to the steering wheel. Steering is probably the most important part of a car. If you can't steer, it goes nowhere. And that's what I do. For my sins, I bought a Corvette. I thought it was the best sports car in the world. Please, feel free to laugh. I grew up watching Route 66, wanted a Corvette ever since, and because it's got the crap steering. In 1965, General Motors went to an integral power steering box across the range. Even in the Australian assembled Chevrolets and Pontiacs back in '65, they had an integral power steering box. Right across the GM range, except 2 cars, the Chevy Nova, which went to an integral box in about '73, and the Corvette, which kept the old Ram system right up till the last ones were sold in early 1983. Crap steering with the old Ram. I bought a Corvette, it had the Ram, it was rubbish. I looked around, couldn't find anything better. I searched in America and found a company called Borgeson. Borgeson was started by a Swedish immigrant, John Borgeson, in 1914 in Torrington, Connecticut, and he took out the world's first patent on a universal joint with needle roller bearings, and the company has progressed since then. They make universal joints for the aeronautical, marine industries, cotton gins that use universal joints somewhere in them. They make them for everything. But about 20 years ago, they branched out into steering boxes. And the very first one they released was a modern integral box for the 55, 57 Chevys. And the left-hand drive, of course. And then they, basically using the same box but with a slightly different bolt pattern, they made a box for the C2 and C3 Corvettes, and that's the box I bought. But silly me, I ended up buying 8 of them, and but the company made me the Australian distributor, and that started in July 1, 9 years ago. So I've been running 9 years, and looking forward to, I'm in my 10th year doing the business. But I've been getting a lot of inquiries for guys with right-hand drive Chevys, mainly Chevys, but a lot of other cars as well. And I looked at the box that Borgeson was using for the left-hand drive 55, 6, 7 Chevys, or Tri-5s as we call them, because they were 3 model years. And I found an equivalent right-hand drive box. And I basically made the same modifications to them, and I'll happily show over there what I've done later on. And I've, about 3 years ago, released a power steering box for the Tri-5 Chevys. But then the guys with the 58 to 64 Chevys wanted them. And so I found another right-hand drive steering box without any modifications, but with a custom adapter plate, would bolt straight in to the 58 to 64 Chevys. So I've got that market covered. But people have been contacting me with custom lines and Fairlanes and mainline utes.
And Galaxies.
Oh, and Galaxies, yes. And that's what's coming up in the future. I was going to split this talk, I know I've only got 9 minutes, into the past, present and future. I spoke about the past. The present, I'm in the process of manufacturing an integral power steering box for the HKTG Holdens. As you know, they were the last Holdens to have the old Ram type steering. And when they went to the HQ, of course, they had an integral box, which was made by Kirby Bishop up in Sydney. Although I've got a much better box for those that'll bolt straight into an HQ Holden. I've got one over there. It's a Saginaw box, 700 series, big heavy duty, and if you've got an HQ to WB Holden and you want power steering box, these are far better than the old Kirby Bishop. So that's what I'm doing at the present. In the future, I've got hopefully later this year, but certainly next year, I'll have the Holden HKTG power steering box. I'll have another one for the FE to HR Holdens. I'm working on a box for the XK onwards Falcons, and up to the XC, I think, where they first came in with an integral box. The Ford people here will know more than I do. So that's what Pro Steer Down Under is looking forward in the future to supplying power steering boxes for a wide range of Australian muscle cars, as well as left-hand drive American ones. I've had inquiries from people for oddball cars like Buicks and Ramblers and even Humbers. And if the demand is there, I can look into it and hopefully be able to help those people. But I've also started manufacturing. This is a ball stud. Everyone here, I imagine, has a ball stud or two in their car somewhere in the steering. Well, it possibly is, but I think everyone has a ball stud. And I've had these manufactured by a company in Dandenong because they're almost impossible to get for the old Chevrolets. They're a 1-inch diameter ball, and they came out in about the 1930 Chevys, and they went right through into the 50s and possibly the 60s. So I've got ball studs. That's basically covering what I'm manufacturing at the moment, but in the future there's a lot more stuff out there. It was also good to see Con a little earlier. If I can just reminisce, he's a famous drag racer in the past, and we've known each other a long time, and it's good to see him here. He was saying to me earlier, the last time I saw you was in the SEMA show. I said, I hope I was at the Borgeson stand there. He said, yes, you were. So I haven't been for a few years, but I like to go over every now and again and visit the SEMA show. Everyone know what the SEMA show is? If you don't, I can tell you later. It's in November each year, and Borgeson have always got a trade show on, and I go over there to learn about the products and bring it back here and sell to people here who need it. I'm probably close to the 9 minutes. No, I'll keep talking. So, oh look, you won't shut me up unless he tells me to, but I think I should throw it open to some questions. Sir?
In the future, do you see yourself getting into electrical assisted steering, which is so much common on modern cars, or are you going to stick to hydraulics?
The answer is no at this stage. I've got no plan for that. There's a reason for that. I was talking to a place called Competition Engines recently in Clayton. I think it's Clayton, Springvale. They were doing an HK Holden, and to do that, what they had to do was cut the steering shaft between the wheel and the firewall, adapt in an electric power steering motor from possibly a Mazda or one of those little cars that do have electric steering, and bolt it all together. It's very complicated. I think Con might have something to tell me there. Putting electric steering in a car that wasn't originally equipped with it is, I believe, fraught with problems, whereas putting a simple hydraulic pump on the engine and a modern power steering box in place of the existing manual box, I believe, is a simpler way to go. I think electric steering, as has been proved in the C6 Corvette and the VE Commodore, when it's designed in at the factory, great way to go. I've got no problem with that. You don't have the pump, the fluid, the hydraulic lines, it's all built into the rack. But as a retrofit, it's not as simple as you might think. Con?
Just to add to that, John, with the electric power steering, you can also use like a hydraulic rack, and you can put an electric power steering pump out of an Astro.
Well, funny you should say that. A customer of mine, Peter Boots, this is popping a lot, sorry, Pete's Classic Garage in Moorabbin. He had a customer with a 59 Corvette that had been converted to right-hand drive using the original left-hand drive steering column. Now, I don't know if you know much about those early Chevrolets, but the Corvettes, but when the Corvette came out in '53, because that was a very limited model, they only made 300 in the first year, they used parts of the '52 Chevrolet, and they had the side steer gearbox, steering box, which means the sector shaft is horizontal, whereas most cars, they're a vertical shaft. Anyhow, this guy, someone had moved it over to the right, but the owner was a man of some girth, and he had trouble getting it under the big steering wheel, and he wanted a smaller steering wheel. But Peter said, oh, well, you're going to have power steering because you lose your leverage. Anyhow, he consulted with me, and we found a Chevrolet Nova, a Borgeson left-hand drive Chevy Nova box, mounted on the outside of the chassis, would be the duck's guts. The engine in this Corvette, though, was out of a late model Corvette that I think it's an LT engine with the water pump and a gear-driven water pump. And, yeah, and the only thing that you could drive off the front of the crankshaft was the alternator. There was nowhere for a pump. So I happened to have an Astra, Holden Astra electric steering pump I bought for another project that died. Anyhow, we fitted that, mounted it on the outside of the right-hand chassis rail behind the steering box. And that Corvette, I've driven it, it drives as if the factory had made it right-hand drive with power steering back in '59. So yes, I appreciate that. The electric pumps are quite good. Other questions? I see a gentleman there.
Yeah, is it possible to adapt the internals of these modern power steering boxes into an older box? In other words, I've got a box that you wouldn't get off the shelf. But it's really what you might call a power assistance box. It's not really good power steering, but it's a recirculating ball type thing, and quite a large box. Is it possible to put modern bits into them?
I've found out, being involved in hot rodding all my life, as Con will, I'm sure, agree, there's nothing you can't do if you put enough money and effort into it.
I was worried you were going to say that.
I've gone to the extent I've already had a casting made to fit a modern power steering box internals into a custom casting to fit the FJ Holden. That's been a little bit on the back burner at the moment, but it'll renew itself like a phoenix from the ashes in the future. I'll have power steering for the FX and FJ Holdens. But basically, I had to get a pattern made that bolted into the FJ Holden, but had the internal space to take a modern power steering internals. To get an existing manual box and modify it, it's very difficult because you've got a piston with a Teflon a piston ring inside it, and that's got to slide in the ball, which means you've got to have pressure on both sides for when your piston goes backwards and forwards. So you've got to get the hydraulic pressure from the front around to the rear, or from the rear, I guess, the driver's side round to the front to push the ram backwards. It would be more trouble than it's worth, I believe. Without seeing the box, it might be different if I saw it, but to make it work with your existing housing, it would be extremely difficult. It'd be much better to make a new box. It'd be probably a lot cheaper. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, last year you and I spoke about a replacement power steering box for the Australian Valiants.
Yes.
Yeah, have you progressed on any further on that?
I've gone a little further. Yes, I've found a donor box which has got exactly the right length sector shaft. I have to get a new housing around because, as you know, the Valiant box, it's a big U-shaped casting, and it doesn't look like any other power steering box because the Valiant, as you probably know, doesn't use coil springs. It has a torsion bar, and a coil spring is just a torsion bar with a bend, and but the Valiant uses a straight long torsion bar that long or so, and it fits. The steering box sits over the top of it, and basically like that, if that was the torsion bar, and the sector shaft's on one side and the flange that bolts it to the chassis is the other. So it's a very complicated casting to get made, but yes, I've found the box with the correct shaft length. All I have to do is get the shaft re-splined, but then get a pattern made, get a steering box made, but it's coming, yes. Any other questions? I see, was there one up the back, did you say? No? Oh, yes?
What's the ball start look like?
Ball stud. You can have a look at it. It's there you go. Give it back later. They cost $66. Any other questions? I think I've probably covered it, but Robert, my friend, and I will be over there later to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You make sure you get that ball stud on the way back.